Hi, Julie here. Welcome back to our channel, Conquer College Admissions. Today in this video, I'm going to play a training that I did for students who are interested in pursuing business and econ as their undergrad majors. So let's go ahead and watch the training. So 4 major changes to the admissions process. I know I talked about this a lot, but this is so important because you have to understand what is happening for you to come up with a unique strategy, right? So number 1, unpredictable and low acceptance rate. Harvard 3.5%, Columbia 3.8%, UPenn 5.8%, Yale 3.7%, Brown 5.2%. And these are overall admit rates. So if we look at more of like the specific business undergraduate programs, they tend to be more competitive, especially for UPenn because they have Undergraduate Wharton. USC is 9.2%, Duke is 5.1%, Johns Hopkins 6.2%, UCLA 8.6%, and NYU is 8%. So some of these colleges have an undergraduate business programs and some colleges do not. So I will talk about why you knowing this right now is really important, because sometimes we'll have students in our program and they'll say, oh, I want to go to UCLA to study business. And I'm like, they don't have a business program, so why are you going there? So research is really important part of this process. So we'll talk about that today. Yale admitted 3.7% of its total applicants this year, lowest acceptance rate ever. This means almost everyone who submitted the application got rejected, 96%. Duke acceptance rate overall was 5.1%, and USC's acceptance rate this year was 9.2%, and it was one of their lowest acceptance rate to date. UCLA, UC Berkeley, all the UC schools, their acceptance rate, we don't say a decline, we just say it's plummeted because even students with straight A's, perfect SAT scores get rejected from UC schools in today's time. So number 2 major change is the dramatic growth in early admissions applicant pools. And if you are a student interested in business, it's even more important for you to really know this, because you do want to strategize. Okay, am I going to apply early decision, early action, restrictive early action, or am I going to resort to regular? Or am I going to do early decision 2, which NYU Stern 2 offers? So the issue is that typically when students apply early, there tends to be a higher chance of students getting accepted, especially binding applications, because you are saying, okay, I commit to your school, and if I get it, I will go. And that's early decision. Now, Columbia University received 49% more applications than last year. Harvard received 57% more. Yale also had their lowest early admit rate in 2 decades, 9%. Duke early decision, their admit rate was 12.9% because they had 30% more applications. Right now, all the business schools are competitive, and especially like UPenn Wharton, UMich Ross, USC Marshall, NYU Stern, all of those are, they're just getting more applicants. So the 3rd major change is conflicting advice on the SAT and ACT. So initially when COVID broke out and colleges were trying to adjust to whether they should accept the SAT or ACT scores or not, Columbia actually said, okay, we're going to do permanent test optional policy. And then colleges like Purdue University, they said, well, we're going to require the test. And then Yale and Princeton and a couple of other Ivy League and top tier colleges left it as, okay, we'll do it for 1 more year or for 2 more years, and we'll come back to you and let's see what happens. And what did happen was that Yale reinstated their standardized testing requirements for admissions process. And Princeton University, what they did is we are extending our test optional policy. So they are extending it. So it's like, do I take it? Do I not take it? That's always something that a lot of my students and I discuss, because for some of my students, I tell them not to take it because it doesn't really make a difference in their application. And for some students, I say, you do need to take it. And then with the business schools, what are they looking for, which we will talk about today. The 4th major change is that colleges need to see evidences of your academic interests and intellectual curiosity in business and econ. I don't know if you all watched the Shark Tank on ABC. I'm sure if you're a business major, I'm assuming that you did watch a few episodes on it. And there's a panelist, Mark Cuban, and I've been listening to a lot of his podcasts lately. I always knew of him. I also like Sarah Blakely. Those are really of my great mentors. And One of the things that he talks about is, okay, well, if you're a high school student and you want to go into business, you probably don't know the real reason why. Sometimes working in the corporate sounds really fancy, or you want to do accounting because it provides a higher salary than other business major. So the reason can be very different. And so that's why I see a lot of high school students focusing on, what do I want to become? Or what do I want my job to be when I get out of college? But that's not a right question to ask, because a lot of things will change when you graduate from college. It's even changing today. So a better question that you should be asking to guide your action steps in your high school years is, what am I interested in? And this is exactly what Stanford is talking about in terms of intellectual vitality. Within business, what do I want to study? What research topics interest me? What kind of department and concentrations of business am I really excited about? So those are some of the questions you should be asking versus, what do I want to do for my career? And with a lot of business applications that I've helped our students out with, we don't really talk about career that much, okay? Because colleges even know that it's not going to be the same thing. So let's talk about 5 outdated business strategies. Number 1, this applies to all majors, and that is just focusing on GPA and SAT scores. If that's the only thing that you're focusing on and you're relying on that, that's not going to do much. The final decision to colleges saying, hey, let's accept this student, let's accept that student, is not going to come from your GPA and SAT scores, especially in a competitive major like business programs and econ majors, okay? Outdated strategy number 2 is, attending those business programs, business competitions, business summer camp, business, camps that focus on like, okay, we're going to give you real life experiences. And I just screenshotted Launch X from MIT because a lot of students, think, oh, I'm doing it at MIT. I'm doing business at MIT. So that's going to help me stand out. That's definitely not the case. There are reasons why you should pursue these programs, but you cannot rely on this program and think that participation in these kinds of efforts will help you stand out, because so many high school students do it too. And I've read thousands of college essays where students talk about summer programs and camps related to business, but it was so theoretical or so general that it really didn't do anything to the student's application. So there is a good reason to do it and there is a bad reason to do it. So figuring that out is really important. So don't rely on it, because I don't want you to think that you're good, but later having to realize that it really didn't do much. Another outdated strategy is a lot of students try to start businesses or do nonprofits. And a lot of the times the ideas are rudimentary. So students will say, okay, I could do a tutoring business, or I can code an app, or I can do like a nonprofit thing and donate my money to a cause that I'm really interested in. And again, a lot of students do those things. So back in the days, maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, these things did work, but now it doesn't, because everyone is trying to do the same thing. So figuring out, how can I take it to the next level is always my question for my students. And when my students come up with good questions or ideas for their passion project or ways to stand out, I have to say, let's disregard that and let's think of a better idea, or here's another idea that I want to give you, right? So we always want to think more than where most people would stop at. Another outdated strategy is thinking you have to play an instrument or participate in sports, because I don't know why, but so many people still have the notion that they need to do everything. You need to be a well-rounded student. I mean, especially business undergraduate students, right? They think, I have to be an extrovert, I have to play sports, I have to play an instrument, I have to do this, that. And you almost feel like you have to be like this perfect person. And no, that's, first of all, that's not possible. And second of all, colleges are not looking for a perfect person. So if you're doing these things because you think it's gonna help you stand out, then that's definitely a reason why we should think about whether it should be pursued, continuously. And for some students, they tell me like, oh, I've been doing it for such a long time. I've been in competitions. I really love doing this. Then we put it under their personal interest. So we don't disregard it altogether, but don't try to do just this to show colleges, because you could just do it on the side and not talk about it to colleges at all. So, And sometimes, people will say like, well, are you telling me not to play sports? It's such an important part of my life. And I'm like, no, you can play sports, but we don't need to include it into your application if that's not going to be an integral part of our strategy, right? There's always an opportunity cost. And the last mistake a lot of students make is that they say, okay, Julie, I'm in DECA, I'm in FBLA. That's going to help me stand out. That the competitions that I'm a part of, we are national, we are state, those things will help me stand out. It is a good participation. I'm not going to say, hey, don't do DECA or don't do FBLA. I think it's a great introductory point for a lot of business students, but we have to take it to the next step. What's the domino effect? What is it that you learn from this experience that we are stretching to the next level? And I will talk about that in one of my strategies today. How many of you are participating in DECA or FBLA? Yeah, a lot of you are. Yeah, everyone's like, I do FBLA. Yeah, specifically for business majors, number one is you have to identify your business major and concentration. So not every college offers a business as an undergraduate major. You have to know this. The moment you tell a college admission officer, oh yeah, I want to go to your school to major in business, but that school does not offer a business, that's a total letdown. And that just tells me that you didn't do research about the school, right? And so one resource I like to share with our students is College Navigator. And here when I type in USC, and I go into programs and majors, I can see that, okay, business is a part of their umbrella. And when I go into bachelor and master, let's see if they offer it at a bachelor level, and they do. So it's really important for you to know that the college offers a business school to undergraduate students. And you think, well, they have an MBA program. That's different. That's master's level. For undergraduate level, it is very limited. So I like to use this with our students to really assess, okay, do they offer it first of all? And then also go in and see, okay, how many students are currently enrolled in each of the concentrations? And that also gives us a really good idea as to what types of concentrations are offered, how big is the total class size. And so, using resources like this is going to be crucial. And obviously, there are other really good information here as well. So you need two strategies, okay? The first is going to be, okay, I am going to have a strategy for my business major, okay? But you're also going to apply to different colleges that do not have a business major. A lot of our students will say, well, I really want to go to Yale University, or I want to go into, as an example, like UCLA, and yeah, we will still apply to those colleges, but we have to have a different strategy because it's not going to be an undergraduate business program in itself, okay? So two strategies, one for business and one for non-business. And that identification needs to happen right now. If you're thinking about this right before you apply, you're in trouble. And the reason why we need to figure this out right now is because every college will ask you, okay, why do you want to come to our school? And why are you selecting your major to be economics or sociology or business, right? And I'm giving you USC as an example. So I have to, in my supplemental essay, state why I want to pursue business at USC. And that reason needs to be very good. And then here they're asking for your second choice as well. And that's where our alternative major will come into place. And so based on my students' personality and interest, some I will say, okay, let's go with Econ. Some I will say, let's go with cultural studies. That really depends on our strategy. And that's really the benefit of working with someone who can say, okay, here are some options that we can go ahead and look into. So a couple of business concentrations: business administration, communication, entrepreneurship, innovation, finance, international relation, leadership, innovation, marketing, risk management. Accounting or bachelor in business, this is from USC. Business and cinematic arts, also from USC. Artificial intelligence for business, real estate finance and development, and accounting and finance. And so I just pulled this from USC as an example, but a lot of undergraduate business programs are very similar. There is no a surprise. They tend to kind of follow this same pattern. So just know that there are multiple concentrations. Now, what bugs me the most is when a student would come to me and say, oh, Julie, I want to major in finance. And I'm like, you can't. You have to go through business administration, and within that, there is a concentration. So the moment I hear students say this, that, X, Y, Z, I can tell already how much research they did about the school. And if I can tell already by how much you did in terms of research, college admission officers can pick up right away whether you're a good fit for their college or not. Because if the research was surface level, it's going to be automatically out. So picking out concentration is something that I do with my students very intensively, and then we dig deeper within the concentration, and that's really how our students stand out. Second strategy is to create a business domino effect, okay? So I'm gonna share some examples of how that would work out. So when someone tells you like, hi, I do X, Y, Z, or I lived in California, I lived in Virginia, I lived in Texas, no one remembers, right? How many times did you hear like a boring intro from someone you know or a family member or whatever, and you're like, okay, that's great, but you don't remember anything about that person? Because when you start listing things out, saying, okay, look, I did this internship, I did this research, I did this, no one remembers. You have to connect it to something. You have to address why you decided to pursue that direction. You need to create a domino effect. And that's always what I'm looking for. So when my student says, hey, Julie, I am thinking about doing the summer program, we always say, okay, what's the story gonna be? What's the why? And if that's not addressed, it's really hard to make that thing stand out, right? So I'm going to show you some examples of our past students. So this student took on a part-time job first because we wanted to put in a real-life experience. Business is all about real-life experience. If you're telling me theoretical things, that means nothing to me. And then because of that part-time job and something that she had a realization or an observation she made in the workplace, we decided to apply for a very specific summer program that I recommended her. And after she came out of that summer program, we decided to brainstorm and execute a passion project. And then at the end, I had her apply to a couple of internships that's related to her specific business concentration. And in this case, it was marketing. And then DE stands for dual enrollment. So I also had her take a couple of marketing related classes that would support this overall story. So do you see how it becomes a flow of things and a storyline versus here's what I did? But what a lot of people think this is what it is, but it's really not, because behind the scenes, we have a strategy that we're working with, okay? Student number 2 is different. She started out with a school club, and then we also help our students land research positions in business. A lot of students don't know that there's tons of research going on in business. They're like, really? I can do business research? And I'm like, yeah, there are lots of opportunities. I actually participated in many research studies when I was studying at USC with the PhD students and the MBA students. So anyway, I helped her land a research position in her business concentration of finance. And then I asked her to take a college class that supports that business concentration of finance. And at the end, we ended it with a part-time job. So do you see how this student 1 and student 2 are completely different, but they tell a different story for a reason, but it's upside down, kind of, if you think about it. But it's because that's what the story entails, right? And so the part-time job was a great ending to her application because it really summarized all the things that she learned, and then she was able to apply it, right? And then student number 3 starts with a certificate class and a college class, which that I recommended. And then based on that class, I recommended a passion project related to business concentration. Now this student, he wasn't sure, like, what should I pursue as a concentration within business? So learning about it is really important. So that's the first action step we took. And then we went with the volunteering because it aligned with the passion project above that. And then it ended with a really strong internship at a really good, famous company. And then he also did dual enrollment in that concentration. So everyone's story is different. I'm not gonna make a story up for you, but I will guide you along the way. And that's my job, right? It's a very ethical practice because I'm helping you grow, but at the same time, we're building out that story that maybe you couldn't think of yourself, and I can help you out with it. Strategy number 3 is high school class selections and even college classes. They need to support your business major. So when college admission officers at business programs, UPenn Wharton, USC Marshall, NYU, when they're looking at it, they're looking at your math very carefully. Even when you get into a business program, you're taking like 3 to 4 math classes in total when you get in, and these are really tough classes. So when they look at your transcript, they don't want someone who is not doing really well in math. That can be a red flag, okay? So they're looking at pre-calc, AP Calc AB, AP Calc BC, AP Stats and multivariable if that's offered at your school. The second category is 4 years of foreign language. Every business class I took, there was an emphasis on international relations, international studies, and just business is not something you do in your city, like in your state. It's not like your one kind of thing in one location. So having that interconnectedness and you learning business is really important. So 4 years of foreign language is crucial, and 4 years of English. When you get into college, they will also have you retake a lot of English classes, and they do want you to be a fluent communicator, speaker, writer, and all those good things. And so they will look at this very carefully. So I've helped a lot of students get into business programs. And so I wanted to show you that when my students get into these colleges and these specific competitive programs, we don't do a lot. Because when you do too much, it overwhelms the application. And a lot of other competitors of yours, they are trying to do a lot. So when you try to do too much without a strategy in place, that's where you miss it, right? Because even maybe you studied really hard, you had good GPA, you had good SAT scores, you did all the right extracurriculars, DECA, FBLA, business club, the list goes on, but every time my philosophy is less is better, because we'll do the really good things that other people are not thinking about. So yeah, this student got accepted into UCLA and UC San Diego for economics, University of Michigan Ross. This student got in for economics and UPenn and UC Santa Barbara. She landed a research position here related to Econ. And this is another UC Irvine research position that I help my students out with. And then this is also, this student, she actually got into Marshall, and she actually messaged me like 1 year later saying like, I still use all of your resources today. And then she ended up getting like an internship at a 3.2 billion in assets company. So she was telling me like, first of all, thank you for helping me get into Marshall. And then later on, she was able to land fantastic internships. And that's why going into a good business school is important, because it's all about networking connections. Even to this day, like if I see someone at like a networking event, or I tell them, yeah, I went to USC Marshall, I can make immediate connections right away. So that's really like the benefit of going into a college with strong networking, environment, and it's like a family thing, right? So, and of course with business, connection is so important, because when you get hired, when you go through like the job process, which is really important, a lot of it is through connections, believe it or not. It's really powerful. Okay, so I have a couple of other strategies. I have like tons of things I want to show you today, so I try to squeeze in as much as possible, but I do want to talk about summer break, because it is a really important time, and summer is here for some of you. It is going to start in a few weeks for other people, but taking a few college classes that relates to your business concentration is going to be important. Strategic passion project that supports your business theme. The reason why it is so important for business students to partake in passion projects is because you have to do the work. Like, you have to be in it. I can tell a difference between someone who started their business or started their entrepreneurship, because what they write in their story is so raw, like you've experienced it, you have a lot of insight and perspective, versus someone who talks about it in a theoretical way. So passion project is really a really fantastic way for you to get your hands dirty, play the game, be in it, and really know the struggles of business. SAT and ACT prep is really important. Most of the time, I do recommend my students to go for SAT and ACT as business majors. They do favor it a little bit more than others. In a research position that supports your academic interests, a lot of students don't know that research is available for high school students interested in business, so landing one here is really a great standout factor. And I do recommend some summer programs to our students. Some are exploration based, like if you're starting out, I'll recommend a couple of introductory programs, but most of the time I'll recommend specialized programs. Okay, a couple more high-level business strategies. You have to get good recommendation letters. You have to show that you put yourself out there, you network, you engage with your professors, you are very like on top of things. That those are characteristics that business schools really love. Because if you're like, yeah, I didn't talk to anyone, I never talked to my teacher, like that is a characteristic that business majors do not like. Take 1 or 2 business-related college classes, because we're going to talk about that in your supplemental essays. Avoid generic business summer programs and camps. Most of the time, colleges will know that they're pay to play or they're very generic. And I could recommend a lot of good programs that are not generic, that is actually worth your time and money. So those are some of the things that I would recommend to my students. Focus on quality over quantity. You don't need to, show colleges that you know everything about every part of the business, like management, hiring, marketing, finance, accounting, entrepreneurship, innovation, technology. You don't need to know everything. And that's not even how it works when you get into USC or NYU or business programs, because you concentrate on 1 or 2 topics. So you always want to dig deeper versus talking about everything, okay? Add 2 to 3 core real-life experiences and avoid theoretical statements. If you read something or you've seen something and you're talking about that as a basis for your statements and your arguments, that's not a really good way to show that you're fit for a business major. So adding 2 to 3 core life experience, passion project, research position, internship, those kinds of things can really, really level up the quality of your supplemental essays, okay? So there's one more that I really want to convey, is that you really need to have 2 lists of colleges, okay? So business, so there's about 7 to 8 popular business programs, and you also need to have a separate plan for non-business majors, because some colleges will allow you to choose an alternative major and get in, and then you could transfer into a business program. UPenn Wharton does not let you do that. Some colleges will not let you, but most business schools do allow that. And just like my own personal encounter, when I was at USC Marshall, I was in this Econ class. It was a prerequisite, and there were tons of Econ students telling me that they are Econ major, but they're in it because they want to transfer to business. And so I've seen that just firsthand as a student, but I also give this strategies to a lot of our students too. So if you feel like, okay, so my GPA and SAT score is not good enough for business, then there's always another way to get in. You don't always have to go into that. Another like a good question is, like, some students will say, oh, I want to get into engineering program no matter what. Well, if it's not competitive enough, your application is not really there, and you're lacking a couple of things, there are other ways to get in always. So of course there are restrictions, but those restrictions, I would say, at a numerical rating, like 10% of those restrictions are there, but 90% of the colleges will allow that flow to happen, because UC Berkeley released data saying that 80% of their undergraduates changed their major at least once, which is crazy.